Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, staring at the massive alien ship that had just appeared on their screens. The vessel was 3 times larger than any human ship, with strange curved surfaces that seemed to shimmer in the starlight. His crew worked quietly at their stations, but he could feel the tension in the air. "Sir, they're sending us a message," said Lieutenant Pete Adams from the communication station. His voice was steady, but his hands shook slightly as he worked the controls. "Put it through," Jake replied, keeping his voice calm even though his heart was racing. This was humanity's first contact with an alien species. Something told him it wasn't going to be friendly. The main screen flickered, and suddenly they were looking at a creature that looked nothing like a human. It had 4 arms, pale blue skin, and eyes that seemed to glow with an inner light. When it spoke, its voice was cold and filled with contempt. "I am War Commander Vextol of the Zephyrian Collective. You humans have spread beyond your homeworld without permission. This is unacceptable. We have conquered 17 star systems, and now we will add yours to our empire." Jake felt his stomach drop. The alien continued speaking, its words cutting through the silence of the bridge like a knife. "You have 72 hours to surrender completely. Remove all your ships from space and prepare for occupation. If you resist, we will destroy every human colony and reduce your homeworld to ash. You are weak, divided, and your technology is primitive. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." The screen went black, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing fear in their eyes. They had always known this day might come, but hoping for peaceful first contact had been foolish. "Get me Admiral Parker on Luna Command," Jake ordered. Priority 1. Meanwhile, on the moon base that served as humanity's military headquarters, Admiral Lisa Parker was already dealing with the crisis. The Zephyrian message had been broadcast to every human colony and military installation simultaneously. Her communication officer, Commander Tony Lee, was fielding calls from panicked colony governors and military commanders across human space. "Admiral, we're getting reports from all sectors," Tony said, his usually calm demeanor cracking under the pressure. "The aliens have ships stationed at every major colony. They're not attacking yet, but they're making their presence known." Lisa nodded grimly. She had been expecting something like this ever since humanity had started expanding beyond Earth. The universe was a big place, and they had always known they weren't alone. She just hadn't expected their first alien neighbors to be so hostile. "What do we know about their capabilities?" she asked her intelligence officer, Colonel Amy White. "From what we can see, their ships are larger and more advanced than ours. They seem to have some kind of energy shielding that our sensors can't penetrate properly. Their weapons appear to be plasma-based, much more powerful than our current arsenal." Lisa studied the tactical display showing human space. Red dots marked the locations of Zephyrian ships, and there were far too many of them. The aliens had clearly been planning this for a long time. "How many ships do they have?" she asked. "We count at least 50 in the initial wave, but there are probably more we can't detect. They're positioned to hit our major colonies and supply routes simultaneously." Back on Earth, President John Hayes was in an emergency meeting with his top advisors. The White House Situation Room was filled with military officers, scientists, and politicians, all trying to make sense of the alien threat. "What are our options?" the president asked, looking tired and worried. The weight of humanity's survival was now on his shoulders. General Marcus Blake, the head of Earth's military forces, cleared his throat. "Honestly, sir, we're outgunned. Our fleet is spread thin across 12 star systems. We have maybe 200 ships total, and most of them are lightly armed patrol vessels or cargo haulers. The aliens seem to have a coordinated battle fleet." "What about our defenses?" Hayes asked. "Earth's orbital platforms are strong, but they're designed to stop asteroids and small attack forces, not a full alien invasion."
"Oh, yes."
"Our colony worlds have minimal defenses. Most of them rely on patrol ships and ground-based weapons." Dr. Amy Richardson, the chief science officer, had been quiet during most of the meeting. Now she spoke up, her voice thoughtful. "Mr. President, we might be looking at this wrong. Yes, they have better technology and more ships. But they don't know us. They don't understand how humans think or fight." "What do you mean?" Hayes asked. They called us weak and divided. They think we'll just surrender because they have bigger guns. But they've never seen humans when we're backed into a corner. They don't know about our industrial capacity, our ability to adapt, or our refusal to give up. General Blake frowned. That's all well and good, Doctor, but hope and determination don't stop plasma cannons. No, but ingenuity might, Richardson replied. We need to study their technology, find weaknesses, and hit them where they don't expect it. While the leaders debated, the first attacks began. In the Proxima system, 3 human colonies came under assault. The Zephyrian ships moved in slowly, broadcasting their demands for surrender as they approached each world. On New Boston, the largest human colony outside Earth's solar system, Colonial Governor Robert Kim watched the alien ships descend through the atmosphere. The colony had 50,000 residents, mostly miners and their families. They had no military ships and only basic defensive weapons. Sir, they're demanding we shut down all power and prepare for landing, reported his aide, Captain Julie Ross. Tell them we need time to evacuate civilians, Kim replied, though he knew it was hopeless. The nearest human military ship was days away. The Zephyrian response was swift and brutal. Energy beams lanced down from their ships, destroying the colony's communication array and power plant. The message was clear: surrender now or face annihilation. But something unexpected happened. Instead of panic, the colonists began to organize. Mine Supervisor Carl Davis started coordinating with the other work crews. Mining heavy machinery for construction, and most importantly, they had nothing to lose. They want to take our home, Davis said to his crew. Let's show them what human miners can do. The news of the attack spread quickly through human space. On every world and every space station, people watched the reports with growing anger. The aliens had made a fundamental mistake. They had threatened not just human governments or military forces, but human families, human homes, human children. Admiral Parker received reports from across human space. Military commanders were requesting orders, colony governors were asking for support, and civilian leaders were demanding action. But most surprising were the volunteers. Merchant captains were offering their cargo ships for conversion to warships. Factory workers were organizing to produce weapons and ammunition. Even children were asking how they could help. Admiral, Commander Lee said, we're getting thousands of applications for military service. People are literally lining up at recruitment centers. Lisa smiled grimly. The aliens had expected fear and surrender. Instead, they had awakened something they didn't understand. They had given humanity a common enemy, a shared threat that would unite the species like nothing ever had before. As the 72-hour deadline approached, the Zephyrian War Commander Vextel prepared for what he expected to be a simple occupation. His intelligence reports described humans as a fractured species, constantly fighting among themselves, with weak military forces and primitive technology. The conquest should be complete within days. He had no idea that he had just made the greatest mistake in Zephyrian history. The humans weren't going to surrender. They were going to fight, and they were going to fight in ways that would horrify and confuse an alien species that had never encountered anything like human determination and creativity. The war was about to begin, and the Zephyrians were about to learn why declaring war on humanity was the worst decision they had ever made. Colonel Ryan Carter crouched behind a pile of mining equipment as plasma bolts sizzled overhead. The Zephyrian ground forces had landed on New Boston Colony 3 hours ago, expecting quick surrender. Instead, they found themselves fighting through a maze of industrial machinery and angry humans who refused to give up. Katie, how's that surprise coming along? Ryan shouted to the mine engineer who was working frantically with a cutting torch behind an overturned cargo hauler. Katie Brooks looked up from her work, sweat dripping down her face. Almost got it, Colonel. These mining charges weren't meant for combat, but I think I can make them work. Ryan nodded and turned back to his makeshift squad of colonists. They weren't soldiers, but they knew how to work with dangerous equipment. And they weren't afraid of hard labor. More importantly, they were fighting for their homes. The aliens had made their first major mistake by landing in the industrial district. They expected to find cowering civilians, but instead found themselves in an area filled with heavy machinery, explosive materials, and people who knew how to use both as weapons. "Sir, they're moving up the main road," called out Mike Torres, a cargo loader who had volunteered as a spotter. "Looks like 20 of them in formation." Ryan smiled grimly. The aliens were fighting like they were on parade, moving in perfect lines with their energy weapons held at precise angles. They had no idea what was coming. "Katie now would be good," he said. She pressed a button on her improvised detonator. The street erupted in a series of explosions as mining charges hidden in the pavement by the maintenance crew tore through the alien formation. The survivors scattered, their perfect military discipline breaking down as they tried to find cover. "Move. Out," Ryan ordered. "Hit them while they're confused." The colonists charged forward using industrial tools as weapons. Plasma cutters designed for mining became deadly weapons in close combat. Heavy lifting equipment became mobile cover. Even the simple hand tools became dangerous in the hands of people who used them every day. Back on Earth, Dr. Amy Richardson's team was working around the clock to analyze the alien technology they had managed to capture. Her assistant, Dr. Steve Collins, had been studying the energy signatures from the Zephyrian ships for 18 hours straight. "Amy, come look at this," Steve said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion but excited. "I think I found something." Richardson hurried over to his workstation where multiple screens showed complex energy patterns and mathematical calculations. "What did you find?" "They're shields," Steve said, pointing to a specific frequency pattern. "They're incredibly strong, but they have a weakness. See this resonance frequency? If we can generate a pulse at exactly this wavelength, their shields will collapse." Amy studied the data, her scientific mind racing through the possibilities. "Can we generate that frequency with our current technology?" "That's the beautiful part," Steve said with a tired grin. "We don't need new technology. We can modify industrial equipment to produce exactly the right frequency. Shipyard construction lasers, mining equipment, even some factory machinery can be converted." Within hours, the discovery was transmitted to every human colony and military installation. The information spread through quantum communication networks faster than the aliens could move their ships. What had seemed like an impossible technological gap suddenly became manageable. Commander Nick Thompson was leading a patrol of 3 small ships through the asteroid belt near Mars when he got the message. His ships were tiny compared to the alien vessels, but they were fast and maneuverable. More importantly, Nick had grown up in the asteroid belt and knew every rock and hiding place. "Sir, we've got company," reported his navigator lieutenant. Sarah Kim. 3 alien ships, coming in fast. Nick looked at his tactical display. Enemy ships were massive, heavily armed, and following a direct course toward his position. They were also following standard military doctrine, which meant they were predictable. "Take us into the asteroid field," he ordered. "Nice and slow." His second-in-command, Lieutenant Paul Martinez, looked worried. "Sir, regulations say we should maintain safe distance from the asteroids during combat." "Paul, forget regulations. We're not fighting a regulation war anymore." The human ships slipped between the asteroids, using the rocky debris as cover. The aliens followed, but their larger ships couldn't maneuver as easily in the tight spaces. Nick smiled as he watched them struggle to maintain formation. "Now we spring the trap," he said. "Target their lead ship with everything we've got." Human ships opened fire, but not with their weapons. Instead, they used modified mining lasers tuned to the frequency Dr. Richardson's team had discovered. The alien shield flickered and died, leaving the ship vulnerable. "Conventional weapons. Now," Nick ordered. The alien ship, designed to fight in open space with energy shields, was helpless against simple kinetic weapons once its defenses were down. The humans didn't have fancy plasma cannons, but they had lots of metal projectiles and the knowledge of exactly where to aim them. The alien ship began to break apart. Its crew trained for honorable combat between shielded vessels, but unprepared for the brutal efficiency of human tactics. The other 2 ships tried to retreat, but the asteroids that had protected the humans now trapped the aliens. Within an hour, all 3 alien ships were debris floating among the rocks. Nick's patrol hadn't lost a single ship. Similar scenes were playing out across human space. The aliens had expected to fight a conventional war against a conventional enemy. Instead, they found themselves dealing with humans who treated the conflict like an engineering problem to be solved. On the industrial world of New Pittsburgh, factory manager Tom Wilson was converting his entire production line to manufacture weapons and ammunition. His workforce had volunteered to work double shifts, and they were turning out equipment at a rate that amazed even Tom. "Sandra, how's the conversion coming?" he asked his maintenance chief, Sandra Adams. "Better than expected," she replied, wiping grease from her hands. "We can produce modified shield breaker devices at a rate of 50 per hour. The ammunition lines are running at triple capacity." Tom nodded. The aliens had counted on humanity's industrial capacity being limited by peacetime production. They hadn't realized that human factories could be converted to wartime production almost overnight, and that human workers would volunteer for the kind of hours that would kill most people. "What about the civilian evacuation?" Tom asked. Sandra laughed grimly. "What evacuation? Nobody's leaving. The families are working the assembly lines while the regular workers handle the heavy machinery. Even the kids are helping with simple tasks." The aliens had expected panic and refugee streams that would clog human transportation networks. Instead, they found entire populations that had decided to stay and fight. Reports were coming in from across human space that confirmed the same pattern. The Zephyrians had prepared for a war against military forces, but they found themselves fighting entire civilizations. Every human colony had become a fortress. Every human civilian had become a combatant. And every human factory had become a weapons plant. War Commander Vextel was beginning to realize that something was very wrong. With his intelligence reports, his forces were meeting resistance everywhere, and it wasn't the kind of resistance he understood. The humans didn't fight like any species he had encountered before. Report, he ordered his intelligence officer. "Sir, we're taking heavy casualties. On all fronts, the humans are using tactics we've never seen before. They're fighting from civilian areas, using industrial equipment as weapons, and they seem to have found a way to defeat our shields." Vextal studied the tactical displays. Instead of the quick victory he had expected, the war was turning into a prolonged conflict. Worse, his forces were being beaten by an enemy that should have been technologically inferior. "How is this possible?" he asked. "Double quotes, sir. I think we misunderstood the humans. They don't fight like warriors. They fight like warriors, solving a problem." For the first time since the war began, Vextel felt a chill of fear. His species had conquered 17 star systems. By fighting other warrior races who followed predictable patterns of honorable combat. But humans weren't warriors in any sense he understood. They were something much more dangerous. They were problem solvers. And they had decided that the Zephyrian collective was a problem that needed to be solved permanently. The war was just beginning, and already the aliens were learning that declaring war on humanity had been the worst mistake in their species' history. Admiral Lisa Parker stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching the tactical display that showed human space. 3 weeks had passed since the alien invasion began, and everything had changed. The scattered human colonies were now connected by a network of communication and supply lines that had never existed before. Status report. She ordered her chief of staff, Commander Tony Lee. "Ma'am, Operation Wildfire is ready to launch. We have 230 ships assembled, including 80 civilian vessels that have been converted for combat. Captain Morrison is leading the main attack force." Lisa nodded. The plan was ambitious and dangerous, but it was also uniquely human. Instead of trying to match the aliens ship for ship, they would hit them everywhere at once with whatever they had available. "What about the industrial production? Tom Wilson's factories are producing weapons and equipment faster than we can distribute them. Every major colony now has the ability to produce shield breaker devices and ammunition. The civilian population is working around the clock." Lisa smiled grimly. The aliens had expected human civilization to collapse under the pressure of war. Instead, it had become more organized and productive than ever before. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defender, but now he was surrounded by a fleet unlike anything humanity had ever assembled. Military ships flew alongside converted cargo haulers, luxury yachts that had been fitted with weapons, and even mining vessels that had been turned into mobile weapons platforms. "Sir, all ships report ready," said his communications officer, Lieutenant Pete Adams. Jake looked at the mixed fleet on his screens. It wasn't pretty or professional, but it was human. Every ship represented people who had decided to fight rather than surrender. "Begin the attack," he ordered. The human fleet moved forward in a formation that would have horrified any military academy instructor. Instead of neat lines and proper spacing, the ships moved in clusters, each group covering the other's weaknesses. The converted civilian ships couldn't match military vessels in a straight fight, but they didn't need to. They just needed to be dangerous enough to make the aliens pay attention. On the industrial world of New Pittsburgh, the alien invasion force was about to learn what human industrial capacity really meant. Commander Helen Price had been planning the defense for days, and now she was ready to spring her trap. "Tom, are your people ready?" she asked the factory manager through her communicator. "Double quotes, Helen. We've been ready for hours. The whole production line is rigged to blow, and we've got surprise packages waiting for them." The alien ground forces landed exactly where Helen had hoped they would, right in the middle of the factory complex. They expected to find cowering workers and valuable industrial equipment to capture. Instead, they found themselves in a maze of conveyor belts, heavy machinery, humans who knew every inch of the facility. Sergeant Paul Martinez led his squad through the factory floor, using the production equipment as cover. His Marines weren't fighting a normal battle. They were fighting in an environment where every machine could be a weapon, and every human worker was a potential combatant. "Contact front," called out Corporal Linda Clark as alien soldiers rounded a corner. But instead of a firefight, she activated a switch that sent a convoy belt full of steel beams crashing into the alien formation. The aliens tried to advance through the factory, but the humans had turned the entire building into a weapon.
"Ow, Malton."
Metal from the furnaces became a defensive barrier. Heavy lifting equipment became mobile shields. Even the factory's ventilation system had been modified to pump out choking smoke that confused the alien sensors. Meanwhile, at a secret laboratory on Luna Base, Dr. Amy Richardson was putting the finishing touches on her latest innovation. The captured alien technology had given her team insights into energy manipulation that would have taken decades to develop naturally. "Steve, run the final test," she told her assistant, Dr. Steve Collins. The device on the laboratory table hummed to life, generating a field of energy that shimmered in the air. It looked simple, but it represented a breakthrough that would change the entire war. "Perfect," Steve said, reading the instruments. "The adaptive shielding is working exactly as a state is designed. It automatically adjusts to counter incoming energy weapons." Amy smiled. The aliens had superior technology, but they were fighting the last war. They expected their enemies to slowly develop countermeasures over months or years. They had no idea that humans could reverse engineer and improve upon alien technology in a matter of weeks. "Get this to the production facilities immediately," she ordered. "I want every human ship equipped with this system within days." The breakthrough came at the perfect moment. Captain Morrison's fleet was engaging the main alien battle group, and the converted civilian ships were taking heavy casualties. Aliens had better weapons and stronger shields, but they were about to discover that humans didn't give up just because they were losing. "Sir, we're getting reports from across the fleet," Pete Adams reported. "The civilians are holding their positions despite heavy damage." Jake watched his tactical display as a converted passenger liner, the Star of Venus, rammed directly into an alien cruiser. The ship was destroyed, but it took the alien vessel with it and created an opening for the smaller human ships to exploit. "That's what I'm talking about," he said quietly. "Send the signal for Phase 2. Across the fleet, the human ships began implementing tactics that no military academy had ever taught. Instead of trying to fight the aliens on their terms, they were forcing the aliens to fight on human terms. The cargo hauler knew Hope had been converted into a mobile factory, producing ammunition and spare parts even during the battle. The luxury yacht Golden Dream was serving as a mobile hospital, treating wounded from multiple ships. Even the mining vessel Iron Mountain was contributing by using its industrial equipment to clear debris and create safe passages for the smaller ships. Earth President John Hayes was watching the battle reports with a mixture of pride and terror. The human fleet was holding its own, but the cost was enormous. Every ship lost represented hundreds of human lives. "Sir, we're getting reports from the front lines," General Marcus Blake reported. "The aliens are starting to change their tactics. They're not fighting like they did at the beginning of the war." Hayes nodded. "What do you mean? They're becoming more cautious, more defensive?" "It's like they're starting to understand that this isn't going to be the quick victory they expected." Dr. Richardson's voice came through the communication system from Luna Base. "Mr. President, I have good news." "Apt!" "The adaptive shielding is working perfectly. Our casualty rates are dropping dramatically." Hayes felt a surge of hope. "How long before all our ships are equipped?" "The factories are working around the clock. Wilson's people say they can have the entire fleet upgraded within 72 hours. Back at the battle, the tide was beginning to turn. The alien fleet was still larger and more powerful, but the human ships were becoming harder to kill. More importantly, the humans were learning to work together in ways that confused and frustrated their enemies. Commander Nick Thompson had taken a small patrol and turned it into a mobile strike force. His ships would appear suddenly, hit the aliens hard, and then disappear back into the asteroid fields before the enemy could respond. "Sir, we've got another opportunity," reported Lieutenant Sarah Kim. 3 alien ships are moving through the SE belt in formation. Nick studied the tactical display. The aliens were still following their military doctrine, moving in predictable patterns and maintaining proper spacing. They hadn't learned that in this war. Following the rules would get you killed. "Take us in," he ordered. "Let's show them what human creativity looks like." The attack was swift and brutal. The human ships used the asteroids as weapons, pushing massive rocks into the alien formation with tractor beams. When the aliens tried to respond, they found their enemies had already disappeared into the maze of debris. War Commander Vextall watched the battle reports with growing alarm. His forces were still winning in terms of ships destroyed and territory captured, but the cost was becoming unacceptable. More importantly, the humans were adapting faster than his intelligence officers had thought possible. "Sir, we need to revise our strategy," his tactical officer reported. "The humans are not fighting like any species we've encountered before." Vextall studied the tactical displays. The human fleet was smaller and less advanced, but it was also more flexible and creative than anything in his experience. They were treating the war like a massive engineering project, constantly improving and adapting their approach. "What do you recommend?" he asked. "Sir, I think we need to accept that this is going to be a long war. The humans are not going to surrender, and they're getting stronger every day." For the first time since the invasion began, Vextall realized that his species might have made a terrible mistake. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were learning to fight better than anyone had thought possible. The war was far from over, but the aliens were beginning to understand that they had awakened something they didn't know how to defeat. The war had been going on for 3 months, and Captain Jake Morrison hadn't slept more than 4 hours at a time in weeks. His crew aboard the UES Defender looked exhausted, but they kept working. The aliens rotated their forces regularly too. Keep them fresh, but humans had discovered something the Zephyrians didn't understand. When fighting for survival, humans could push themselves far beyond what should be possible. "Sir, enemy fleet approaching from Sector 7, reported Lieutenant Pete Adams, his voice hoarse from countless hours at his station. Jake looked at his tactical display. The alien force was fresh, their ships gleaming and their formations perfect. His own fleet was battered, patched with spare parts, and held together by determination and creativity. But they were still fighting. "Signal all ships," Jake ordered. Here we go again. Across the fleet, captains like Sarah Davis aboard the EU's Vigilant prepared for another battle. Her ship had been hit so many times that half the hull was replacement. Parts from 3 different vessel types. Her crew had been awake for 36 hours straight. But when she asked for volunteers for the most dangerous mission, every hand went up. "Danny, how are our weapons?" she asked her tactical officer. We've got enough ammunition for about 20 minutes of heavy fighting, Danny Wu replied. But the new adaptive shields are holding strong, Sarah nodded. The humans had learned too. Make do with less while the aliens needed everything to be perfect. It was becoming a significant advantage. On Luna Base, Dr. Amy Richardson was working on her most ambitious project yet. The laboratory looked like a war zone itself, with equipment and components scattered everywhere as her team worked around. The clock. Carl, are you sure this will work? She asked her physicist, Dr. Carl Johnson. The theory is sound, he replied, studying the complex equations on his screen. If we can create a resonance cascade in their shield matrix, it should disable every Zephyrian ship in the area simultaneously. Lieutenant Michelle Taylor, the engineer assigned to the project, looked up from her work. The power requirements are enormous. We'll need to link every reactor on Luna Base just for one shot. Amy smiled grimly. Then that's what we'll do. Get me a connection to Tom Wilson's factory network. If this works, we'll need to mass-produce these devices immediately. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, Major Chris Rodriguez was leading the most dangerous mission of the war. His team had been traveling for weeks in a modified cargo ship, heading deep into Zephyrian territory. Their mission wasn't to destroy military targets. It was something much more subtle and potentially devastating. Anna, are you ready with the broadcast equipment? He asked his demolitions expert, Staff Sergeant Anna Green. Ready, sir? We've got transmitters that can punch through their communication networks and reach civilian populations directly. Corporal Danny Wu, who had been cross-trained as a communications specialist, was monitoring alien frequencies. Sir, I'm picking up civilian chatter from the planet below. They're talking about the war, and they don't sound happy about it. Chris nodded. This was what they had hoped for. The Zephyrian military had told their people that humans were primitive savages who would be easily defeated. But the war had been going on for months with no end in sight, and civilian populations were starting to ask questions. Begin the broadcast, Chris ordered. Across the Zephyrian homeworld, alien civilians suddenly found their communication networks filled with something they had never heard before. Human music, poetry, and art flowed through their systems. Of human families, human dreams, and human achievements replaced their regular programming. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. The Zephyrians had been told that humans were mindless beasts, but the broadcast showed a rich, complex civilization with art and culture that was both beautiful and completely alien to their own experience. Back in human space, General Marcus Blake was coordinating the largest intelligence operation in human history. For months, his agents had been preparing for this moment, and now it was time to reveal one of humanity's best-kept secrets. Agent Santos, are you in position? He asked through the secure communication link. Maria Santos was standing in the middle of a Zephyrian military base, wearing an alien uniform and speaking their language perfectly. Ready, General? Agent Thompson and the others are standing by at their targets. Bill Thompson was on another alien world, having lived there. For 5 years as a deep cover operative, he and dozens of other humans had been placed in Zephyrian space long before the war began, preparing for the day when humanity might need inside information about their neighbors. All agents begin Operation Revelation, Blake ordered. Across Zephyrian space, human agents who had been sleeping deep in alien society for years suddenly activated. They didn't commit sabotage or violence. Instead, they simply began revealing the truth about human capabilities and the real progress of the war. The Zephyrians had been told their forces were winning easily, but the humans showed them the real casualty reports. They had been told that human technology was primitive. The agents demonstrated captured human equipment that was more advanced than anything the Zephyrians had. War. Commander Vextall was in his command center when the reports started coming in. At first, he thought it was a coincidence. A few isolated incidents of humans appearing in places they shouldn't be. But as the reports multiplied, he realized the terrifying truth. How long have they been there? He asked his intelligence chief. Sir, some of these humans have been living in our space for years. They speak our language, understand our culture, and they've been gathering intelligence the entire time. Vextall felt his confidence cracking. The humans hadn't just been reacting to the Zephyrian invasion, they had been preparing for interstellar conflict long before first contact. They had planned for this war before the Zephyrians even knew humans existed, sir. There's more, his aide reported nervously. The broadcasts to our civilian population are having an effect. There are protests on 12 worlds demanding an end to the war. For the first time since the conflict began, Vextall realized that his species might not just lose this war. They might be completely outclassed by an enemy they had never understood. Captain Morrison was leading another battle when the news reached him. Dr. Richardson's new weapon had worked perfectly, disabling an entire alien fleet with a single shot. More importantly, the technology was already being distributed to human forces across the galaxy. Sir Admiral Parker sends her congratulations, Pete Adams reported. The new Cascade weapon has been tested successfully at 3 more locations. Jake allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The aliens had superior technology, but humans had something more important. They had the ability to learn, adapt, and improve faster than any enemy could counter. Commander Helen Price was leading a boarding action against a Zephyrian command ship when she discovered something that changed everything. Her Marines, including veterans like Sergeant Paul Martinez and Corporal Linda Clark, had fought their way to the alien bridge. What are you finding in their databases? Ma'am, this is incredible. They have detailed files on 17 different species they've conquered. But look at this section about humans. Helen studied the alien data. The Zephyrians had been studying humanity for years before the invasion, but their entire assessment was wrong. They had seen human conflicts and assumed humans were weak and divided. They had seen human technology and assumed it was primitive. They had completely misunderstood what they were looking at. They thought our wars made us weak, Helen realized. They didn't understand that our conflicts taught us how to fight better. The boarding action was successful, and the captured data revealed the full scope of Zephyrian intelligence failures. They had observed human civilization but hadn't understood it. They saw competition where humans saw innovation. They saw chaos where humans saw adaptation, intelligence officer, agent. Kevin Ross was analyzing intercepted Zephyrian communications when he made a discovery that would change the entire war. The aliens weren't just losing battles, they were losing faith in their own victory. Sir, you need to hear this, he told General Blake. The alien high command is discussing terms for a negotiated settlement. Blake studied the intelligence reports. After 3 months of war, they want to negotiate. It's more than that, sir. They're talking about offering reparations and territory. They're scared. Blake realized that the humans had achieved something unprecedented. They had not just fought off a superior alien force. They had made that force afraid of them. The war was far from over. But the Zephyrians were learning a truth that would haunt them for generations. They had declared war on a species that treated conflict as an engineering problem. And humans were very good engineers. The aliens had expected a quick victory against a primitive enemy. Instead, they had awakened something that would never stop. Adapting, never stop improving, and never stop finding new ways to win. They had learned why declaring war on humanity was the worst mistake any species could make. Admiral Lisa Parker stood on the bridge of her flagship, looking out at the largest human fleet ever assembled. 500 ships of every type and size surrounded her, all preparing for the final assault on the Zephyrian home system. 6 months of war had transformed humanity from scattered colonies into a united military force that even she found hard to believe. Ma'am, all battle groups report ready, Commander Tony Lee announced. Captain Morrison's assault fleet is in position. The support vessels are standing by, Lisa nodded, studying the tactical display. The Zephyrian home system was heavily defended, but human intelligence had identified every weakness. More importantly, they understood something the aliens still didn't grasp. This wasn't just a battle for territory. It was a demonstration that would end the war permanently. Begin the attack, she ordered. Captain Jake Morrison led the first wave, his battle group moving through space with the deadly efficiency of a machine designed for one purpose. The UES Defender and her escort ships had been upgraded with every innovation human science could produce. They carried weapons that could adapt to any defense, shields that could counter any attack, set, and crews that had been forged by months of constant warfare. Enemy fleet approaching, Lieutenant Pete Adams reported. They're bringing everything they have. Jake looked at the massive alien formation. The Zephyrians had assembled their entire remaining navy for this final battle. Their ships were still larger and more advanced than human vessels, but Jake knew that wouldn't matter anymore. Signal all ships, he commanded. Execute plan, Prometheus. Across the human fleet, commanders like Captain Janet Lewis and Colonel Mike Torres began implementing tactics that would have been impossible when the war started. The humans no longer fought like they were trying to match alien technology. They fought like engineers solving the final equation in a complex problem, Captain. Lewis commanded a squadron of converted cargo ships that had been transformed into mobile weapons platforms. Her vessels looked crude compared to the sleek alien warships. But they carried Dr. Richardson's latest innovation, weapons that could turn the enemy's own technology against them. Target the command ship, she ordered her crew. Let's show them what human ingenuity looks like. The device activated, sending out a signal that infiltrated the alien ship's computer systems. Within seconds, the Zephyrian vessel's own weapons turned against its escorts. The aliens watched in horror as their most advanced ship began destroying their own fleet. Colonel Torres was leading the ground assault on the Zephyrian command center. His Marines had learned to fight in ways that terrified the aliens. Instead of honorable combat between warriors, the humans fought like they were exterminating a dangerous pest. Move fast and hit everything, he told his troops. No quarter, no mercy, no stopping until they surrender completely. The Zephyrian defenders had prepared for a traditional battle, but the humans gave them no chance to establish defensive lines or fight with dignity. They used every dirty trick, every unfair advantage, and every psychological weapon they had developed during months of warfare. Back on Luna Base, Dr. Amy Richardson was putting the finishing touches on her masterpiece. The weapon she had been developing would not just win this battle, it would ensure that no alien species would ever threaten humanity again. Carl, are all the targeting systems synchronized? She asked Dr. Carl Johnson. Perfect calibration, Amy. Chief Kim has the firing controls ready. Chief Petty Officer Roger Kim was aboard the UES Retribution, the specially modified ship that would deliver Richardson's final innovation. The weapon looked simple, but it represented the culmination of human scientific achievement and determination.
Doctor?
Richardson, we're in position, Roger reported through the communication link. Fire when ready, Chief. Let's end this war. The weapon activated, sending out a pulse that spread across the entire Zephyrian fleet. But instead of destroying the ships, it did something much more devastating. It demonstrated to every alien in the system that their technology was completely vulnerable to human science. Every Zephyrian ship found its computers infected with human programs. Their weapons could no longer fire. Their shields could not activate. Their communication systems were broadcasting human messages. In a single moment, the most advanced fleet in alien space had become completely helpless. War Commander Vextal watched his instruments go dark one by one. His flagship, the pride of the Zephyrian Navy, was now under human control. Worse, he could see the same thing happening to every ship in his fleet. How is this possible? He asked his technical officer. Sir, they've somehow taken control of our entire computer network. They're not just jamming our systems, they're running them. Vextal realized with growing horror that the humans had not just defeated his fleet, they had captured it intact. Every ship, every weapon, every piece of technology was now in human hands. Sir, the humans are broadcasting on all frequencies, his communication officer reported. The main screen activated, showing Admiral Parker's face. When she spoke, her voice was calm but carried the weight of absolute victory. War Commander Vextal. I am Admiral Lisa Parker of the Unified Earth Defense Forces. Your fleet is now under our control. Your homeworld's defenses have been neutralized. You have exactly 1 hour to order the complete surrender of all Zephyrian military forces. Vextal felt his world crumbling around him. What are your terms? Complete demilitarization of your species. Reparations for all damage caused to human colonies. and tribute payments for the next 50 years. You declared war on humanity. Now you get to learn what losing to humanity means. On Earth, President John Hayes was addressing a joint session of world leaders and colonial governors. The war that had started as humanity's greatest threat had become its greatest triumph at the end. Zephyrian Collective has agreed to our terms, he announced to the assembled officials. Their military forces are surrendering across 17 star systems. Their advanced technology is now ours to study and improve upon. General Marcus Blake stood beside the president, holding reports from across human space. Sir, we're receiving surrender messages from 12 other alien species. They observed what happened to the Zephyrians and decided diplomacy was preferable to war. Hayes nodded with satisfaction. The message had been sent clearly across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer the primitive upstart species that could be conquered by superior technology. They had become something much more dangerous. Captain Morrison was aboard the Zephyrian flagship, accepting the formal surrender from War Commander Vextel. The alien looked defeated and confused, unable to understand how his technologically superior force had been so completely outmatched. How did you do it? Vextel asked. Our ships were better. Our weapons were more advanced. Our tactics were proven across 17 conquests. Okay. Jake looked at the alien commander with something approaching pity. You made the same mistake every bully makes. You thought being bigger and stronger was enough. But humans don't fight to prove we're stronger. We fight to make sure our enemies can never threaten us again. But your technology was primitive when we attacked. 6 months ago, yes. But you gave us 6 months to study your technology, adapt to your tactics, and develop countermeasures. You fought the war you wanted to fight. We fought the war we needed to win. Dr. Richardson was already analyzing the captured Zephyrian technology when the surrender was announced. Her team was working to reverse engineer and improve upon every alien innovation. Within months, human technology would surpass anything the Zephyrians had achieved in centuries of conquest. Amy, what's our next priority? Asked Dr. Steve Collins. Defensive systems for all human colonies and long-range sensors to detect any other potential threats. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and we need to be ready for whatever comes next. The war was over, but its consequences would reshape the galaxy for generations. The Zephyrian Collective, once the dominant military power in local space, was now a client state paying tribute to Earth. Their 17 conquered worlds were now under human protection, their populations freed from alien rule. More importantly, news of humanity's victory spread throughout the galaxy. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly knew that humans were not to be threatened. Diplomatic missions arrived daily, seeking trade agreements and mutual defense pacts with the new galactic power. Admiral Parker established her headquarters on the former Zephyrian capital world, overseeing the integration of alien territory into human space. The process was going smoothly, partly because the humans had learned valuable lessons about governing diverse populations. Ma'am, we're getting reports from the outer colonies, Commander Lee informed her. 3 more alien species have requested permission to establish diplomatic relations. Lisa smiled. Schedule the meetings, but make sure they understand the terms. We're not interested in being anyone's equals anymore. After what the Zephyrians taught us about galactic politics, humanity will be the dominant power in this region. The final scene took place on Earth, where a memorial was being built to honor the humans who had died in the war. President Hayes delivered the dedication speech to representatives from dozens of worlds, both human and alien.